go live. All right, I think we are going live. I've got a little loading bar that is moving.
We are streaming live on Facebook.
All right. So, all right, I got to get all my right windows open. And okay. So, hello, Internet, and everybody watching, and good evening. I hope you're staying safe and dry if you're on the East Coast. But welcome to Authors Just Talk About Cooking, and I have a bunch of cool authors, and we're going to talk about cooking. So, if you guys will, just introduce yourselves, go down the line, tell us who you are, what you write, and tell me your favorite food as well. So, let's start with Sarah.
All right. Hi, I'm Sarah K. Stevens. I write psychological thrillers, including The Anniversary, It Was Always You, and A Flash of Red. And my favorite food is probably anything related to or associated with chocolate. That or cheese.
Choice. All right, Jonathan, how about you next?
My name is Jonathan Brazee. I'm a full-time writer living in Colorado Springs. Just moved here because I have 21-month-old twin girls, and the schools where we weren't very good. I primarily write military science fiction, military fiction. Got about 78 titles to my name. USA Today bestseller, two Nebula finalists, and a Dragon Award. Favorite food? I knew you were going to ask me this, and I honestly sat for about 20 minutes trying to figure it out. And I don't have a favorite food. However, if I had to pick a few, it ranges like from watermelon gazpacho to matsutsaka ribeye to kalbi to barbecue ribs. Desserts, I do, because I don't eat a lot of desserts. My favorite desserts are key lime pie and black forest cake made with raspberries instead of cherry.
Oh, I'm already hungry. I mean, I knew it was going to happen during this panel anyway, but all those descriptions just wonderful. Terry, tell us your books and food.
I've written 41 novels and probably a dozen short stories, primarily space opera, military sci-fi, and then my other brand, I have a lot of urban fantasy and paranormal, and I write a little horror on the side. And I am a semi-professional eater, I would say. So this is, we are entering my wheelhouse here. I'm always tormented answering this question because if it's a one-item thing, then it's sushi grade tuna. That's number one. However, if it's an everyday food, then it is without a doubt pie. And I am a very opportunistic pie eater. I have an array of varieties that I like. So. All
right, and it just occurs to me that I forgot to introduce myself. So hello, I'm HP Holo. I wrote The Wizard's Way, which is a steampunk fantasy. And my favorite food, I'm actually in the same boat as Jonathan. It took me a while to figure out what my favorite food is, and actually surprised me when I landed on it. My favorite food is Milano cookies dipped in Bailey's Irish cream, which is, wow. I just discovered it. Like I discovered it by accident just this year because I usually I love Milano cookies, but when you dip them into the Irish cream, the cookies soak up the stuff so nicely. It's just a perfect flavor combination. And I don't eat it that often. I think if I was to pick a food that I ate often, it'd be sushi, just all of it. But yeah, Bailey's Irish cream and Milano cookies. So to get us started, I'm actually going to go easy. And you've already heard your most favorite food. What's your least favorite food and why? We'll start with Terry.
Okay. I hate butter beans so much. I won't even, if I ever am given, when I become emperor, let's just put it that way, and I will be a fair and just emperor. First of all, everybody's going to have a giraffe to ride. Secondly, the second order of business will be to get rid of butter beans. And this is not and I have felt this way for almost 52 years. This isn't going to go away. My hatred runs hot and deep, and it will never alter.
Jonathan, how about you? What's your least favorite?
Well, this is going to surprise a lot of people. The food that I do not eat and cannot eat is cheese.
Really?
Oh, it breaks my heart.
I just cannot eat it. If someone tries to feed it to me, unknowingly, I will make Linda Blair look like a piker as I projectile vomit it. And it's not all the cheeses. Some of the cheese I actually eat, but I think it reminds me of the cheeses that I can't. I mean, Roquefort and blue cheese and all that kind of stuff is horrible. But other than that, sardines and oysters. Those are the three things that I cannot stand.
Oh my goodness. I feel sad about the cheese, but
I know. It makes it rough when I try to order, in the United States at least, when I try to order pizza, they look at me like I'm, burning the cross or something. That's why I like Italy, where only half the pizzas have cheese.
Yeah, and that's kind of a real shame about American pizzas, because I've actually started cooking pizzas without cheese on them just to lower the fat content. They're not that bad if you use the right ingredients. So yeah,
well, guys, you can send all of your cheese to me. And
yeah, me too. We will sacrifice for you and eat all the excess cheese.
Well, speaking of
Sarah, what's your...
Yeah, so I grew up with my father and my brothers, including Heather, your husband, eating pickled herring, and I hate it so much. And they would it comes in a jar that you put in your fridge, and they put sour cream on it. I just cannot. That's yeah.
I just have to laugh.
Has anybody tried the rotten shark in Iceland?
No.
Oh no, that's probably the worst thing. I don't know why. I probably try to throw it out of my mind. They can't even make it inside the city limits.
Oh my goodness.
It's done outside because the Icelandic shark, which is like the oldest vertebrate alive, its flesh is actually toxic. And so they have to basically let it rot to let the toxicity leave.
Yeah, so why not eat it,
It is
toxic and rotten. It sounds really good for you.
It's horrible. You could probably go see some people trying it on YouTube. I've seen it there before.
Oh. I'm trying to process that. It's going to take me a minute.
Yeah.
Sarah, I have to say, I had to laugh extra hard about the pickled herring, because that's like a regular thing that we have to have in our house because of Jacob.
I'm so sorry
I don't understand it. Like, it's just the grossest thing to me. Well, not the grossest, because Jacob has also introduced me to my other least favorite food, and that is Branston pickle, which I had never heard of it. And I think Jacob only tried it because there was some YouTuber from the UK who had mentioned it on his channel, and Jacob was curious. And so we managed to find it on Amazon, and he likes it, but it's just this, if you're not familiar with what it is, it's like pickled vegetables that it's just, they're green and they look just so unappetizing, but apparently they're really good on ham and cheese sandwiches. And I will eat most things once, but I could not bring myself to put that in my mouth. It smelled nasty. Anytime Jacob wants it, I make him go to the other side of the house. He is not allowed to eat it in my presence. It's nasty. But yeah, so getting shudders just thinking about it. All right. So next question. How did you guys begin cooking? I know some people have been cooking like since they were children. Like my grandma, she was on a farm family, so the moment she could pick up a knife, she was made to. But I know some of us didn't get into the fun parts of cooking until we were older. So let's start with Jonathan. When did you start cooking for enjoyment?
Well, for enjoyment. Oh, that's when you put it that way. I started cooking because when I was young and my mother was sick, and we just had to cook in order to eat. And then when I joined my first station in the Marine Corps was Camp Lejeune, where there's 2 restaurants out in town, and one's a Burger King. And if I wanted to eat, I had to cook. But cooking for fun, probably when I started getting better and better cooking equipment. When I got my knives, when I got my all-clad and my Le Creuset and all that kind of stuff. And those enabled me to cook more and more things, and I got more and more curious. And then probably, believe it or not, food TV, watching, watching Iron Chef and all those kind of shows. It became more of an enjoyment than just something to put food that I've always been a foodie to eat. And I think if it kind of shifted into pure enjoyment of the cooking.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my computer just went weird. Let's see. Did we? Okay. All right, Sarah, you're next.
Oh, so I started cooking, growing up, we would do little odds and ends, and I kind of got really good at chocolate chip cookies. And then it wasn't until, my husband and I went to graduate school, and we were on our own, and we're kind of sick of living off of frozen pizzas, that I kind of started to develop a repertoire. And then, especially once my children were young, really kind of getting into the process. Baking is a big thing for me. And I think I really started to get invested in baking after my father had passed away, and just kind of that was part of my process of kind of coping with that loss. And also baking can be very therapeutic. So it's been, just a wonderful journey. One of my favorite bakers, her name's Gazina Bullock Prado, wrote a memoir about her experiences kind of becoming a baker. And I ended up reading that and, kind of teaching myself certain baking techniques through a lot of her cookbooks in particular.
Nice. How about you, Terry?
Well, I don't know if you know this about me. I used to own 2 restaurants.
What?
Yeah, that's what I did.
You're in this panel, Terry. Oh my gosh.
No, I grew up well, when my grandfather came back from World War II, he was in Patton's Third Army. He was over there for 2.5 years. He came back, and it's a big thing in our family, and I won't bore you with the details, but we went from being very flush to being destitute because of the war. And he borrowed money to put together scrap lumber and built Ted and Peg's pie stand. So my grandpa was Ted, my Nana was Peg, and they were exceptional bakers, and all of my family were exceptional bakers. And Grandpa made hamburgers, hot dogs, sandwiches, etc. And then we had pie, and we expanded to 3 locations through 2 in upstate New York and 1 in South Florida, where I was born. And so when I bought my first place in '97, built it, and I've had 2 restaurants of my own. So I've always cooked, but I meant to grab this to show you. I still have my first cookbook. It's a Mickey Mouse cookbook from 1972, and it has recipes like peanut butter and jelly and stuff like that. But I started reading that, and I think by the time I was 6, I was already in the kitchen cooking.
That's awesome. Well, my story is not as exciting as owning 2 restaurants. I actually my family liked to cook, my grandma especially, and I would help my mom cook in the kitchen, but I didn't actually get curious about the ins and outs of cooking until I got married. Primarily because I was a teacher before that, and I didn't really have time to enjoy anything, much less food. So I just kind of throw together sandwiches and shove them in my mouth, and that was about as curious as I got with food. But there came a point where I married, and my husband had to start eating on particular diets. And I like to eat well, and I wanted him to be able to eat well. And I know that a lot of people who start particular diets have difficulty sticking with them because they're just not tasty. And so I kind of took it as a culinary challenge to learn how to make things that were both on his diet and delicious. And so I started just experimenting with different ingredients. I happened to, one fateful day, I happened upon the tea and spice exchange in my town, which I'd never really given much thought to, but then I just smelled it and walked in. And learning about spices changed my cooking life, and just all the fun things I could do with spices. But yeah, it's just cooking for me it's a relaxing thing, but there's also a sort of creative challenge involved in it too. So yep. All right. Let's see what my next question is. So it's any given night in your house. What are you cooking for dinner? Or just what are your go-to dishes? Let's start with, who did I start with last time? Let's do Terry this time.
Okay. Well, we eat 3 distinct different meals in my house. My son eats Triscuits and about 4 other, and I can't complain because he's 12 and he's almost 5'9". So everything is going very well.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's just enormous. Anyway, but my go-to tends to be, I cook a lot of fish. And I tend to, like, I'm a seasonal guy. Like in the past 48 hours, I made a huge pot of chili, and I made a huge pot of a thick chicken stew. And so like, if it gets cool and cozy, I'm making stew. If it's bright and sunny, then I'm working with watermelon. I'm always cooking fish, and I will never not have steak in the house is another thing. There's no reason for me to ever not have steak, because steak is one of those things that I think if you're like, what should we have? Well, I don't know. I've got this beautiful steak and butter. And I mean, your meal is answered.
Yes. All right. How about you, Sarah?
Well, we get a CSA box, a community supported agriculture box every week. And so it's always a surprise what's in there, but inevitably there is kale. So we're often cooking a lot of stuff with kale. So especially this time of year, I like to do a kale soup, like you were saying, Terry, with white beans and maybe some sausage and pasta, and it gets nice and kind of thick and delicious and savory. We also, in the summertime, we had a really successful growing season for our tomatoes. So we were eating tomato sandwiches like every day. And then on Fridays, if I have time, I like to make homemade pizza, and I do put a lot of cheese on it. So Jonathan,
I'll send you mine.
How about you, Jonathan?
We don't really have any on any given night. We change throughout the whole thing. So I decided for this, I'd say, well, tonight was Mongolian lamb and orange chicken.
Ooh.
Tomorrow is pork masala. My wife likes the pork better than the veal, and I'm fine with that. And Saturday is kalbi on the grill. So we kind of change a lot, although I do have to agree with Terry. I always have steaks in my freezer, either Angus or Wagyu. Well, actually, it's American Wagyu, which is
I want to come live at your house,
half Wagyu,
specifically
half
in your
Angus.
kitchen.
We do the steaks a lot. I sous vide them, I grill them, or I will sear them on the old cast iron. And I'm getting a brand new range top next week, a Blue Star. So I'm ready to crank up the cooking more.
Exciting.
I could just listen to you talk about cooking this entire time. Man, my mouth is just watering over here. I think, well, if on any given night in my house, like these days, it's actually like, I'm somewhat embarrassed to say it's Hello Fresh deliveries. But so I haven't been, well, we tried it out on a whim, and like compared to what the ingredients that I usually use, like the Hello Fresh recipes are legit, and I found a lot of recipes that I like from there. But before we did Hello Fresh, I actually made a whole ton of pizzas, just different, and it's the thing that, like, there's so much more to pizza than just pepperoni and cheese. And so I really like to just mix up different ingredients and whatnot, especially with cheeseless pizzas for my husband, for example. You've got to get really clever with the other toppings to compensate for the not lack of flavor, but the lessened savoriness with cheese. And so, but we're pizza all the time. I love it. All right, next question. Let's see. What are the must-have ingredients in your kitchen? Like, other than basic stuff like flour, salt, pepper, what are some ingredients that you always have laying around? And I think some of these have already been answered, like steaks and whatnot. But let's start with Sarah for this one.
All right, so one thing I really love is smoked paprika from Trader Joe's. It's such a good all-around spice for everything. And so you already mixed the flour and butter, but I just want to say it has to be King Arthur flour. That is the best flour ever.
Yes.
And
okay, you've got to explain why King Arthur flour, because I see that on your Facebook all the time, and I'm curious now.
It out. So first off, it's a wonderful company. It's employee owned. It's up in Vermont, but their gluten content is guaranteed. So when you're baking, you need to have certain gluten levels for all-purpose flour or bread flour or pastry flour. It has to be higher or lower. And so the fact that they guarantee how much gluten is in each batch of flour, depending on what that's rated, is really helpful to make sure your bakes turn out regularly. So that's why it has to be King Arthur flour, and their recipes are amazing, and their pizza recipes are really, really good. So there you go, King Arthur flour, smoked paprika, and then I would say just having a lot of nice kind of beans, because that can really spice up any dish and add a little bit of protein. One of my children is vegetarian, so adding that is really helpful to get good protein and also make things delicious and creamy sometimes.
Nice. Jonathan, do you have anything to add to your initial?
Yeah, other than the main course, the meats and the proteins and stuff like that, I got to have stock or demi-glace all the time because I use them for the base of my sauces. Rosemary, sesame oil, mirin, Greek olive oil, Kalamata olives, balsamico, and Dijon mustard. They have to be.
I feel like I should be taking notes. Nice. Terry, how about you?
I have to have 2 or 3 kinds of garlic at all times, and I have to have an array of vinegars.
Yeah.
Like I use vinegars for, vinegars have such different flavor profiles that from bright to friendly to punishing and everything in between. And I will say something about King Arthur flour. My wife is a brilliant baker and has her own blog but we settled on, she's a compulsive researcher, and we settled on King Arthur for all the reasons that were mentioned, and it's not bromated. And if you truly want to be repulsed by something in the food industry, look up what bromating is. Basically, it's using unlicensed animal parts to put, after it's bleached, to put nutrients back in. And it's often done outside the United States in unmodified facilities. So King Arthur is so responsible, and the consistency of the product and everything that you get is, for me, even if it's a minor price difference, it's well worth it.
Nice.
And also, if I could
convert out of me.
Yeah, it's, and you know something, you just can, all of the King Arthur line, and she's go to the King Arthur website. Their recipes are amazing.
Oh, they're foolproof. Yeah,
they're bulletproof recipes that are just, you're like, I don't know if I can tackle. You wouldn't have thought you could tackle the things that are on that until you look at it and you say, I can do this. Mm-hmm. And they bring baking back to us. I think they're sort of doing the Lord's work that way. I really appreciate that. And also, one thing I have to have something pickled in the house at all times.
Oh yes.
So whether it's like I've got a big jar of fermented honey red onion pickles right now. That's the current, but I've got to have an array of pickled things.
Just don't do the herring, Terry, because
yeah.
Well, I'm Polish, so I'll basically eat anything pickled. So, you know.
I think as far as my house goes, like I always have at least 2 different varieties of onion. And recently I've discovered that sweet onions and sesame oil are just a magical combination. And so there's that. I've also really gotten into like a specialty olive oils recently. There's a shop near my house called Olive and Then Some, and it sells just flavored olive oils and vinegars. And it's amazing what kind of difference using just a specific olive oil in your dish can make. And so there's like a Tuscan herb one that I use, and then there's one that's got some a hint of lemon in it, and it's just it makes an amazing difference. And it's such a small change to a dish. It's just fantastic how much of a difference it can make. But also garlic. I put garlic in everything. So if I run out of garlic, it's a disaster in my house.
I have actually cheated. I've always used fresh garlic. I always smashed it, then chopped it. But the last time I was at Restaurant Depot, I got pulled in by a jar of garlic, already.
Yep.
And I used it. And sometimes I still do.
I'm too lazy to chop my garlic fresh, so I always just get like the pre-minced stuff. Plus, I can never chop it as finely as I want it to be chopped. But yeah, so we're in the same boat. All right, next question. What would you consider your biggest cooking success, like your biggest cooking challenge that was successful? And then also your biggest or most hilarious cooking failure? And I'll actually start with this one. I garden, and this is my success, by the way. So I keep a garden in the spring. And one year I wanted to try making my own spaghetti sauce or marinara sauce completely from scratch. And I had a really good crop of tomatoes that year, and everything came together so perfectly for this one sauce. But I also, for this particular meal, decided to experiment with making my own pasta from scratch. So my grandma had gotten me some pasta rollers for Christmas the previous year, and it is amazing the how different freshly made pasta tastes compared to the dried store-bought stuff. Like it's a lot of work to make it, but it's just so good. And that's become now that I have refined my pasta making craft, because it took me a few batches to get it fully right. Homemade pasta is just a thing that happens in my house now. I love it. So that's my biggest success. My biggest failure didn't actually make it to completed dish form. I think it was General Tso's chicken or something. And the recipe called for some dried chili peppers. And I had never cooked with dried chili peppers before. This was very early when I started doing exciting cooking. And my husband said that he liked stuff really hot. So I decided to put some extra chili peppers in this pan, and the recipe required that I saute these dried chili peppers for a very short amount of time. And putting more in was my first mistake. Sauteing them for more than that short amount of time was my second mistake. We had to go out to eat that night, not because the dish was terrible, but because I rendered the air in our house so hot that it was unbreathable. And we had to just open all the windows, let the house air out, and go somewhere else because we couldn't even keep our eyes open in the house. It was horrible, and I haven't cooked with dried chili peppers since.
Oh no.
But it's hilarious looking back on it. Let's see, Terry, how about you? Go next.
I've been cooking professionally, for a long time and everything. But if you came to me and said, "Show me what you got," it would be two things, and they're kind of disparate. But I make homemade spätzle, and
it's yum.
So homemade spätzle, and I will put my fried chicken up against. My fried chicken is my flagship, I think, in some sense. I brine the bird, and it goes into oil with onions in the oil, and smoked paprika is one of I'm Polish, so anything Hungarian or Polish is naturally going to filter its way in. And but my wife told me one time, she said, first of all, I think that's one of the reasons we're married is because of my fried chicken. And secondly, she said, I don't know anyone who doesn't like fried chicken, and I don't want to know anyone who doesn't like fried chicken, as she was eating a piece of my fried, and I was like, I have arrived. So, and my biggest disaster was I was in college, and my friends and we fished a lot and everything. And I tried to make an early version of a lettuce wrap with some small scallops that we caught them ourselves, the scallops. We had like a full bushel, and somehow they were so unbelievably sandy that everybody bit into them all at the same time and got a mouthful of grit and was crunching their teeth and everything. And I was, it was one of those where I was like, hey, everybody eat up. And everyone was spitting stuff out and everything. So if you can make semi-drunk college people spit food out, you know that you have truly failed in a magnificent way.
Sarah, how about you? Go next.
Okay, so I would say my biggest cooking accomplishment is probably baking related. So I was able to make macarons, which are those fancy French cookies.
Oh, wow.
And it's very, very fiddly, and you have to get all the proportions right, and you get the little feet on the bottom of the cookie, and then you make a buttercream to mush together. And so I was very proud of that. And my biggest cooking fail probably was when I was first kind of starting to cook. And I remember we were in our first house together as newlyweds, and I was going to make salsa for the first time. And I had never worked with jalapenos before. And I did not wear any sort of protective gloves. And I got all the hot peppers underneath my fingernails, into my eyes. Oh. It was like several days of just burning. I don't remember if the salsa turned out well or not.
I have a similar story like that. I grow banana peppers, and not all of them are hot, but I made the mistake of like I pickle them too. And I made the mistake of cutting up all my banana peppers in one go without gloves on. And so I had just, I don't know how many banana peppers I had, like 30 or 40. And I eventually after that, my fingers started tingling. And I had no idea why, and eventually figured out. Like I went online and looked to see if that was a likely thing. And yeah, it's just there was so much, I guess, capsaicin on my hands that I was just having a physical reaction to it, and it took like 2 days for it to wear off, and it was awful. Man. So yeah, wear gloves whenever you chop hot things. But yeah, all right. Next question.
Hang on, Jonathan has to go.
Oh yeah, Jonathan.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, see,
yeah,
I have no successes. No, my biggest success was when I was about 10 years old, and I found out that they were giving prizes at the Litchfield County Fair in Connecticut, or excuse me, the Winchester County Fair in Connecticut for cooking. $100 for first place, $50 for second, $25 for third. And so I decided I wanted to make some money. So I just went into our cookbook and I cooked 6 different dishes. And I go up there with all the adults and stuff and put my food down. I placed in all 6 categories. And so I,
nice.
As a 10-year-old boy back in, 1968, that was a pretty penny in my pocket.
Yeah.
So I would consider that my biggest success. I don't know. I don't even remember. I remember I made oatmeal cookies was the cookie, but I don't remember anything else. My biggest failure, I had more than a few. A lot of them having to do with pasta, making pasta, like you were saying. But I am I'm known for a few dishes, my barbecued ribs, my brisket, and my pot roast is one of them. And I had everybody talking up my pot roast. So I had a bunch of people over. And I've got this pot roast. I've been cooking it for about 8 hours. And big thing of the pot roast is how much gravy I have and what you do with the potatoes and everything else. And I was in a hurry. And so I have these white jars of different sizes one's flour, one's sugar, one's all this and that. Unbeknownst to me that my ex-wife at the time, well, she wasn't ex at the time, my wife at the time, maybe this is why she's an ex, she shifted or she got mixed up or she didn't tell me why she did it, but she put confectioner's sugar in the flour. And so I'm reaching over to make the gravy and I'm taking the confectioner's sugar and I put it in there and it actually does not quite like flour, but it was close enough that I didn't notice it. And I get the pot roast. I was going to say cut it. You just kind of take it with a fork, got the potatoes, got everything, and poured this gravy over everything. And everybody's like, wow, this looks so good. This looks so great. I'm going to love it. Everybody took a big bite and everybody shut up. I'm looking, I think I know how to make pot roast. And then I took a taste. We had to do carry out.
No. Oh no.
And it's so bad when you're being built up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, I feel stressed just listening to that. Well, it
here,
seems like you would want some comfort food after that. So here is my next question.
I'll just go for comfort food, pot roast. That's my answer.
Well, yeah. What is your go-to comfort food? So Jonathan's got that. How about you, Terry? What's your go-to comfort food?
Grilled cheese and tomato soup.
Oh, mine is close to. Mine is grilled cheese and not cream of chicken. Well, cream of chicken is one of them, but chicken noodle soup. Oh, that's good.
Oh yeah, that's a superstar. Superstar.
Oh yes. How about you, Sarah? What's your go-to comfort food?
Okay, you know what? Mashed potatoes are like eternally comforting. But also my grandma Pauline would make these scrambled eggs that had like a stick of butter in them.
Oh yes.
They're just so incredibly good. So that's another comfort food, I'd say.
Yeah.
My grandmother makes scrambled eggs using like her leftover bacon grease. And they're just like you can feel your heart choking up as you eat them, but they're just so good.
I had that this morning.
Oh yes. All right. My next question. Everyone answered that one, right? I didn't want to skip anybody again. I think we're good. Do you have a favorite kitchen tool, like just a thing you keep in your kitchen that you absolutely have to have and would recommend other people have? let's
KitchenAid
say
mixer.
Terry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
Or
jumped.
Sarah, you can go.
Okay, KitchenAid
Go
mixer.
for
I
it.
don't care. Just do it. Get whatever color you want, but it has to be KitchenAid.
Yep.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I think, Sarah, I think you actually got me my first KitchenAid mixer when I got married.
You guys were getting married. Yes.
Yeah, I think it was you, but yeah, I use that thing all the time. I love it. How about you, Jonathan?
Well, it used to be my Vitamix, but no, now it's my sous vide. I use sous vide all the time. I tend to buy kind of expensive cuts of meat, and you're never going to do it perfectly when you're doing it on the grill or whatever. And every once in a while, and once done a little bit too much with the sous vide, it's never overdone. Nice. I love the sous vide.
Explain to me precisely what it is, because I'm not fancy enough to know.
Oh, a sous vide is basically you're cooking in a water bath. You put your vegetables, your fish, your meat, whatever it is inside a bag. You vacuum seal. However, I just put it in the water. I'm too cheap to get a vacuum sealer. I put it in the water and let all the air out. And then you cook it at it's a very precise temperature. And you get to know what your temperatures are for what you're cooking. And it basically cooks. And you could put stuff in the bag with it, aromatics, liquids, all that kind of stuff. And by the time you're done, if you want medium rare steak, it's medium rare. If you cut one of my roast beefs, normally when you cut a roast beef, it's kind of grayish, pinkish, red in the middle. Other than the fact that you sear the outside, it is the exact same medium rare all the way through. If you cook fish, it is tremendous to cook fish. It says you could do a hamburger. I tried a hamburger one day, turned into a meatball.
Huh.
Just sucked right up into a round thing.
Mm-hmm.
I want one of those now, though. That sounds so cool. All right, next question. Do you guys have a favorite cooking show or celebrity cook? Let's see, Sarah.
Oh, so I already name dropped her, but I will say it again because she's amazing. Her name is Gazina Bullock Prado, and she is a baker. She's also the sister of the actress Sandra Bullock. And so sometimes her sister will show up in different things, but she's a wonderful baker. She had a cooking show on the Food Network called Baked in Vermont. All of her recipes are excellent, and she has a very active Instagram, but her cookbooks are all wonderful, wonderful baking cookbooks.
Nice. Jonathan?
I kind of like Giada De Laurentiis for her recipes, but I've heard some things. She's not my favorite person. I'll put it that way, I guess. But my favorite cooking show, I probably shouldn't have said that, but my favorite cooking show is one out of Australia called My Kitchen Rules. Now they had a celebrity My Kitchen Rules in the United States, and that was nothing. But this show is it's great. It's by far my favorite. When I retired from the Marine Corps, I went to go work in Thailand for a manufacturing company there. And so we got a lot of Australian TV and just love that show. My wife and I would sit, well, she was my girlfriend then, we'd sit and watch it. Now I have to pull it up off of YouTube.
Okay, cool.
You're next, Terry. What's your favorite?
Great British Baking Show.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And it is.
Big part for that, yes.
Yep. It is. My wife brought me to it. And I have all of Chetna's cookbooks, and one of my go-to recipes is one of Paul Hollywood's fish pie, his fish pie, the steak and ale pie. I mean, they're just go-to. But I was a college professor for years, and I love anything that creates a relationship and brings skills into the home. And I think the Great British Baking Show is one of those shows that transcends art and entertainment and education in a beautiful, kind of elegant, whimsical way. And I can't get enough of it. I'm so happy that it exists. And then there's a chef who was passed on. His name was Jeff Smith, the Frugal Gourmet. Oh, and I have all his cookbooks, and he has this one cookbook. All of them are brilliant. He has one, Jeff Smith, Our Immigrants. It's Our Immigrant Families. And it is literally like 50 or 60 different immigrant groups, and he has recipes from each one in the United States. But the one that's for me is the superstar is Jeff Smith Cooks 3 Ancient Cuisines. It's China, Greece, and Rome. And it is and between those three, you get so much skill and variation and everything. And and I think you can get it for like $2 on eBay. And it's just a heck of a value. So.
As for me, I would say, as far as traditional cooking shows go, I'm a huge fan of The Great British Bake Off too. It's such a wholesome and relaxing show. Yeah. But my top favorite food show is actually not, it's not a cooking show in the conventional sense. There's an anime called Food Wars. It's set at a fictional cooking school, and every episode revolves around some kind of cooking competition. And it's given that it's an anime, it's like over the top, ridiculous, high stakes. Like if you fail this cooking challenge, you get expelled, kind of thing. And naturally, the main character always wins because you can't expel the main character. But the show itself puts such a ridiculous amount of effort into making its food look delicious. Like the food is so lavishly animated that every single time I watch it, I say, I want to eat that. And there are people online who have figured out how to put together approximations of the recipes in it. But the comic on which it's based, I learned recently, also there is a gourmet chef that is apparently the advisor for it. So basically the writer of the comic goes and says, I want to do this kind of challenge. What kind of dish can I have these students make to satisfy this kind of plot point or whatnot? And it's a really interesting anime for that reason. And also because it's one of there's, if you're not familiar with anime, there's an entire cooking anime genre that it centers around cooks. And one of its iconic elements is characters' reactions to the food, and they always have these really overwrought reactions. And watching the reactions are one of the most hilarious parts of this anime. It's a fantastic anime overall, but it's one of those that is both fun to watch and makes me want to cook at the same time, and it's just amazing. I love it. Let's see, we are getting close to our end here. So if anyone's, we have some people watching. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask as well. I am going to begin to bow us out with the most controversial food question of our era, which is, what is your opinion of pineapple on pizza? So how about Terry, you go first.
I'm a fan.
Really? Nice.
I love it. Yeah. It's sweet versus, it's the classic contrast. So,
nice. Obviously I'm the same way. I won't go out of my way to eat pineapple on pizza if I can pick from other things, but I do like it. And I've also found recently that pineapple goes really, really well on barbecue pizzas, especially if you use barbecue sauce as the base instead of marinara. But yeah, that's become one of my go-to recipes, pineapple barbecue pizza. Jonathan?
I'm all for it. And my wife won't let me make a pizza without pineapple.
Nice.
And we don't do that canned stuff. We have to get the fresh pineapple.
Of course. I would expect that you would do the fresh good stuff. How about you, Sarah?
Well, tell you what, guys, I don't think I've ever actually had it on pizza, which I know seems very strange. But I have made from a recipe from King Arthur Flour. It's peaches, caramelized onion, and blue cheese pizza. And it is amazing.
Yes.
So I think, as I'm getting older, the sweet and savory mixed together is really pleasing to my palate. And so I think I would be all for the pineapple pizza.
I've become a huge fan of salted caramel things recently because of that. Just sweet and savory is just a great flavor combination if it's done right, because sometimes it can be overwhelming. But in the 90s. It started late 90s with the Mediterranean crush. It started when people started doing the cube of gorgonzola in a prosciutto wrapped fig. Was kind of the catalyst for that. Mm-hmm. But I am a little disappointed in you, Team Holo, that we didn't ask the real hard question, which is Miracle Whip versus mayonnaise.
Two different functions.
Mayonnaise. We're a Duke's household.
Two different functions.
We are.
Yes, you're right. Miracle Whip for sandwiches, for burgers. But when I'm doing my fries, my French fries and stuff like that, it's got to be mayo. And when I sear my steaks, if I'm searing them in the cast iron skillet, they get a very, very thin coat of mayo before I sear it.
Oh,
I
that
don't
sounds
think I've ever had Miracle Whip in a context when I like it. So I'm curious to try it on specific things now. But
Oh,
yeah,
deviled
Duke's
egg,
mayonnaise all the way over
Miracle
here.
Whip.
Yeah, tomato sandwiches,
Ah.
which we've been obsessed with. And if you're going to do mayo, the best mayo, I swear, is not Hellman's, which my grandma always said, but
Yes.
Trader Joe's mayonnaise.
Oh, Trader Joe's.
Oh, really?
It's really good.
Ooh, I've never even tried that mayonnaise.
It's so wonderful.
You're
It's
opening
even
up a whole
better
new
than
universe
stuff.
of mayonnaises
In,
here.
in Belgium, and places like that, they have some very delicious mayonnaise. Netherlands, in fact, that's when I first started putting mayonnaise on French fries. So I was at a flea market and I got some French fries wrapped in a newspaper, and he put a big glob of mayo before I could tell him no. Now it's already there, and I tasted it. And I went, oh, this
Oh,
is actually.
yeah. Why haven't
I love
good.
mayonnaise on French fries.
Yeah. I would put mayonnaise on a flip flop. I mean, let's be perfectly honest. I'm in touch with myself. So yeah.
just make sure you're not. Make sure your Zoom is not on when you do that.
Oh right, yeah. No, there's no Me Too, but no, that's not.
Ah, well, let's see here. I feel like I have one question that I haven't asked yet.
Favorite food stories.
Yes. Any favorite food stories, like from childhood or just in general? So let's start with we'll do Sarah.
Because I'm like jumping in already. Okay, here's my favorite food
go for
story.
it.
In our house growing up with my brothers and I and my mom and dad, it was a split level, and it had like a kind of living area that you could run around this kind of main post. And it was the kitchen, dining room, living room. And I remember being a little kid with my brothers running around that circle, and my mom had made chocolate chip cookie dough, and we would reach into the bowl and grab a little bit and keep running. And then it didn't last for too long because, you're not supposed to eat the raw cookie dough, and they were supposed to get baked and whatnot. But yes, we were pilfering the cookie dough, running around in those circles. And it was a very fun memory of my childhood.
That's
How about
cool.
you, Terry?
I think this is kind of sad, but my mom's last meal was, we love tomato sandwiches on white bread with mayonnaise and salt and pepper. It's just a summer thing. Mm-hmm. And that was my mom's was terminally ill years ago. This is 25 years ago. And she said, I would like to have a tomato sandwich. And I love tomatoes almost more than anything. I love them so much. But now every time I get to eat a tomato sandwich, I think of my mom. Yeah. In a good way. And she ate it and she was like, and it was a really good tomato sandwich. It was like one of those summer, it was in the middle. It was first week of September. So it was a perfect late summer tomato. And anyway, I kind of carry that with me a little bit as a good memory during a bittersweet time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yes. How about you, Jonathan?
Well, at the fancy food show in San Francisco, when all the other big chefs were up in the front, I came across Paul Prudhomme in the back in two booths, and nobody was talking to him. So he invited me in, and I sat there and talked with him for about 2 hours while he was cooking food for me. So that was kind of cool.
Oh, wow.
I know it was pretty cool because everybody was all up in the front. But actually, my favorite story though is when I was in Iraq, we couldn't talk to the sheiks in Iraq. They didn't want to be seen talking with us, so we all went to Jordan, and we had this big old meeting. And the one day that we didn't have a formal dinner, we had to figure out where to eat. And my boss, I was a colonel, he was a general, asked me, where do I go? And I said, well, by the embassy, there's this little place called the Greater Amman Restaurant where they did brioche, which is lamb chops and kebabs that are just, white plastic chairs that you stack on each other and that kind of stuff. And so I told them we should go there. So here we are. We've got the ambassador to Iraq, the U.S. ambassador to Jordan. We've got the director of USAID, all these people, probably 20, 25 of us. And we walk in there and my general's face just fell like a rock. Said, where do you take us? And I said, just don't worry about it. Just sit down. So we're all sitting down on these like cafeteria tables while they're putting together, you buy by the kilogram, and they're putting everything together. And my general is just staring daggers at me. He knows I just ruined his career. And everybody's talk. They brought out the food, and it's all family style. And the first taste, everybody goes silent. all they're doing is grabbing brioche, which are lamb chops, and grabbing all the food. And as we get done, we had like about, it was supposedly was enough food for all of us. And as we get done, the ambassador, the American ambassador of Iraq, just looks up and goes, "Can we order some more?" So that was probably one of my favorite food stories.
Well, that's wonderful. So it looks like maybe Heather lost the connection here, but it seems like we're out of time.
Okay.
Oh, here she's coming right in now.
Oh, I didn't even notice. I was so busy talking.
Hi, Heather. You're
Okay,
just
there I am.
walking up there, right towards the end.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay, excellent. So yeah, I have no idea what happened. My computer's decided to be crazy. But I think that actually brings us close to the end of our panel. So unless you guys have any other things you'd like to talk about.
No, I'm just so glad to participate, and thanks so much for having us tonight.
Yes, thank you all for joining me. This was a lot of fun. So again, if you'll go down the line and say who you are, what you wrote, if you've got any promos or anything going on, and that will be it for us. Okay, so let's start with Sarah again.
Oh, Sarah.
Oh, yes, I'm Sarah K. Stevens. I write psychological thrillers. One of my most recent ones, The Anniversary, is on special right now on Amazon. And I'll go ahead and put that in the chat if anyone is interested. Here we go. All right.
Jonathan?
Jonathan Brazee. My latest release was Hell's Horizon. And the cool thing about that is Giancarlo Esposito, who is in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul and The Mandalorian. He narrated all my chapters.
Cool.
That was pretty cool. When I found out he was doing it, I was pretty pumped.
Oh, yeah.
And Terry.
My name is Terry Maggert. You can go to Amazon or to terrymaggert.com, and I encourage you to read.
Thank you very much. And again, I'm HP Holo, and author of The Wizard's Way and Wizards and Pugs and stuff. And thank you again for coming and spending the evening with us. So, bye.
Thanks so much, everybody. Everyone have a great evening, and go eat something delicious if you haven't already.
Yes.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.